If I'm a Warriors fan, I'm encouraged by how they played. I mean, I feel like their
Yeah.
defense but it was very good. I like the way Andrew Wiggins played, especially in the beginning of that game, especially his defense as well.
Hello and welcome to the Friday, May 21st edition of the TV on Basketball podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're all having a fantastic day and thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. We have an awesome episode lined up for you today. I am joined by another guest, a first time appearance on the show. I'm joined by Miles Johnson, aka Real Talk with MJ. How's it going, my guy?
How you doing, TV? I'm happy to be on here. I'm happy to talk some hoops, talk some NBA, talk about the playing games yesterday. So man, it's gonna be a great episode.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome episode. Miles is the first time on the show, so show him some love. I'm going to have all of his links down in the description of this video and also in my link tree where you could find his podcast, his TikTok, his Instagram. Everything will be found in my bio. But yeah, before we get into this episode, I have to also plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss an episode. And also just show some love on any of the podcast networks. If you're on Apple, leave a review, subscribe to the podcast. And as for the other platforms, just show some love in any way you can. But yeah, in today's episode, it's going to be all playoff talk. We got to start off by talking about that freaking game from last night because that game was freaking insane. So we're going to start off by talking about that Lakers-Warriors matchup. And then also we're going to be previewing what the Warriors need to do to get to the 8th seed. And then for the big point of this whole podcast is that we're going to be making our predictions for the NBA playoffs. We're going to be going through each series and saying who we're going to think is going to win and why. And yeah, so this is going to be a very action-packed episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. And let's just get into this, man. I mean, firstly, before we go into like the NBA basketball talk, I mean, tell us about yourself and kind of like what you do on your pod.
Yeah, so I founded Real Talk with Miles Johnson in July of 2020. And I was in quarantine, for like everyone was, and I was just thinking about ways I could be productive during this time. I've always loved sports. I've always loved talking about sports since high school. I'm in college now. I'm a junior in college now, and I figured, you know what, I might as well just make a podcast and talk about all sports. I mainly talk about NBA and NFL, but it started off as a podcast on Apple Music and Spotify. Then I've also branched out to YouTube and TikTok, so you can all find you. So you can find that all on at Real Talk with MJ. It's on all platforms.
Yeah, you should go definitely check him out because he wants all the smoke. I mean, I've seen this man's TikTok and this guy's freaking beefing with freaking Kobe fans, with freaking like MJ fans. Like, I mean, you think LeBron's a GOAT, right? Do you think he's a GOAT?
I think he's the GOAT, but I wouldn't be mad if somebody says he's the second greatest of all time. So as long as somebody says he's top two, I'm cool with him. But at least for me, personally, I would say he is the GOAT.
Hey, fair enough, fair enough. Honestly, I need to get like a whole podcast dedicated to this and just get a bunch of people's like whole take on who's the greatest of all time. But my man is like, it wants all the smoke. Like, there's like his comment section is filled with freaking them Jordan lovers, man.
Jordan fans, they go hard. Them Kobe fans go hard too. But amen.
Amen. Exactly. So you should definitely go check him out. All of his links, like I said, will be down in the description of this video. But let's start off with this play-in tournament, man. I mean, the first two games have gone on. The first 2 days have gone on. We already know who the 7th seed is. On the East side, we got the Celtics beating out the Wizards 2 days ago as of recording. And last night, because that's a game I do want to talk about. Last night, the freaking Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Lakers. That game was absolutely insane. Miles, just what were your thoughts on that game and like how were you feeling just watching it?
Yeah, so in the first half, I was, as a Lakers fan, as a Bron fan, I was nervous. I was like, Bron wasn't shooting particularly well. I mean, Draymond Green, he was locking Anthony Davis up. Dennis Schroeder wasn't playing well. So that big three of LeBron, AD, and Schroeder weren't playing well, but their defense kept them in the game. It could have really been a blowout. but their defense kept them in the game. I thought Caruso played a huge game, and I feel like with the Lakers as they progress, as they face the Suns or whoever they face in the second round, and moving forward, the guys on their championship run, whether it's KCP, Kuzma, Caruso, those guys, they have that championship level experience that I believe that will transfer over until this postseason. So I just feel like they wouldn't have won that game without Alex Caruso. And also, in the second half, I feel like Bron started finding his touch a little bit, as well as AD. But what really kept them in the game was their defense. Their defense was great. And obviously Steph Curry, he put up 37. You can't really stop that. He's just unguardable. The shots he was making, it was ridiculous. But
at the end of the first half, that shot at the end of the first half, bro.
Man, he ran across like the whole logo. Everybody's like running after him. Bron's like, "What are y'all doing?" I'm like, "Ain't nothing you can do about that." There's nothing you can do about that.
Exactly.
But I mean, as for the Lakers, I'm actually encouraged by this because I know that they are the number one rated defense in the league, and they showed that. And with having all these new pieces with Andre Drummond, obviously having AD and LeBron come back, off their injuries, I still feel like I feel like they're still getting into it a little bit, but I'm definitely excited for what the playoffs has in store.
Yeah, especially. I mean, yesterday, that first half, man, I mean, LeBron, AD, and Schroeder combined for like 15 points. Like, that was ugly, man. That was really ugly. And I mean, shout out to the Warriors as well. I mean, they're like a top 10 defense in the league as well. Draymond Green, for people who thought he was washed up on the defensive end, this guy was putting it, like, was giving everything he got on that end. I mean, he didn't hit a single shot, but he was doing everything else, to be completely honest. I mean, Draymond was absolutely fantastic in that game. And I mean, Steph Curry, 37 points. There's nothing you could do about that. But I'm with you. I'm encouraged by, like, in the second half that LeBron and AD both realized that they're like two of some of the best players in the basketball, and they just kept going to their strengths. Because in the first half, I mean, they kept shooting a bunch of jumpers, which like really was discouraging because it made me feel like they didn't want to be aggressive, especially Anthony Davis. Because
Especially
Anthony Davis, because even though Draymond is like a good defender, I mean, Anthony Davis is like 5 inches taller than him. I thought like he could just like bully him down there, and he just didn't want to do it. But especially at the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, Anthony Davis like just turned something on, and he like actually played really well. And freaking LeBron, man. I mean, there's a couple things I want to talk about here because firstly, that play with Draymond Green where he got poked in the eye at like with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I mean, how'd you feel about that play? Did you think it was a flagrant? And that whole thing about LeBron saying that he saw 3 rims and all that. I mean, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah. So when I first saw that, I'm like, I mean, I'll say I'm a little biased, but I would say I feel like that was a flagrant because his hands went directly to his face, and with LeBron going full speed at the rim, and it's game speed. I feel like he's probably really injured. Now, obviously, a lot of time I feel like LeBron's reputation isn't the best for himself. When he has injuries, he does try to do a lot of theatrics, but I definitely feel like in that specific instance, he was really injured, and I feel like it should have at least been a flagrant for that. I mean, it wasn't like Draymond had his hands on the ball. It wasn't anyone near the ball. His hands went right directly at his face. I believe that happened. Like Draymond has done this like to like Harden in the past. I remember Harden, he had something wrong with his eye. I believe he did something else to LeBron as well, like something like that in the playoffs, in the finals or whatever. But I feel like sometimes Draymond is a little bit wild. Obviously he is a great defender, but I feel like in that instance it was a flagrant.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely weird. It was definitely like an odd play because LeBron is kind of like a lot bigger than Draymond, so him kind of jumping like that is kind of like iffy and all that. I definitely didn't think there was really any intent to it, but it was still a dangerous play. Like for me, it could have really gone either way. I would have like been fine with either, but I think like people didn't. I think the refs didn't want to kind of like start those conspiracy theories again. With Draymond back in the finals, and like I think when the Cavs won in 2016, where he missed a game. Like they don't want to have that type of trouble again. So I kind of see it, but the Lakers still put out a win, and freaking that LeBron shot at the end of the game. It's like a 34, 35 footer from the logo, like. He said after the game he saw 3 nets. That was like that whole thing was kind of like a bit over the top, but man, that was a crazy shot. How did you feel like as a Laker fan, just like seeing like firstly that play transpire, KCP kicking it out with like 3 seconds left and LeBron just hitting it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a dead play. I was like, what's going on? Obviously, I feel like Bron makes the best shots when like it's like the last 2 seconds, last 3 seconds in the shot clock where he can just throw something up. And that was a clutch shot. I mean, the fact that he hit it from that distance and he was fading away, and it wasn't like I can't say. I mean, I can't. I mean, I've heard people say that it was luck. I can't say it was luck because he switched it from from that distance. Let's say, if it was like the Kawhi shot where it bounced around the rim a couple of times. Hey, I know you're. I know you're a Raptors fan. I'm also a Sixers fan too. So that shot,
yeah,
I'm ever think that was the luckiest shot ever. But if it was bounced around like the rim like that, I could see people saying it was a lucky shot. But man, that was just, all-time great players make all-time great shots, and he wasn't playing that good, up to that game. But the best players end up making the best plays, down the stretch. And I just feel like it wasn't for that play, you never know what could have happened. I mean, Curry wasn't missing any of his shots, so if LeBron misses that shot, come down the court, Curry can end up hitting a three, and it could be a whole different ball game. So I feel like, but that shot by LeBron, it was clutch. It was clutch.
Yeah, that was something special. That shot. I mean, I didn't think it was luck. I thought, he knew. I mean, it was an under pressure shot. He knew exactly what he needed to do to get it off, and he did. I mean, Curry said after the game that he's seen a shot like that before. I mean, obviously he was referring to the Kyrie shot like 5 years ago when he shot over him Game 7 of the Finals. But he's like, yeah, it's okay. It's a bit further, so you got to give props to LeBron on that. But yeah, that was an all-time great shot. I saw a stat on Twitter this morning that now LeBron has tied Kobe for the most go-ahead shots to like either go ahead in the game or hit a shot to tie the game with under a minute left. They both have 97 made field goals and like with under a minute left to either tie the game or go ahead. So, man, I mean, for people saying LeBron's not clutch, he's done this his whole career. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yep.
But with the Warriors, going into this next game against the Memphis Grizzlies, we've seen what the Warriors did to them on the final day of the regular season. Is there any way you see the Warriors choking this up, or do you think this is going to be another easy one for them?
I was actually, if I'm a Warriors fan, I'm encouraged by how they played. I mean, I feel like their defense it was very good. I like the way Andrew Wiggins played, especially in the beginning of that game, especially his defense as well. He had a great turnaround shot on LeBron earlier in the game. I was like, Andrew Wiggins, you're doing that. But I feel like it'll be a close game with the Grizzlies, but I still would say that I still would have the Warriors with the edge in that one. Just like other players, whether it's Andrew Wiggins, Juan, I forget what's
Juan Toscano Anderson.
Yeah, he was making some shots. Kent Bazemore was making shots. So as long as Draymond Green doesn't score 0 points, I feel like they should handily beat the Grizzlies. But if obviously he's a little bit challenged on the offensive end. But I'm thinking Curry is gonna have a monster game again. I feel like Curry's gonna have a monster game.
Yeah, I mean that Grizzlies game. I mean, it was competitive. It was competitive for like 3 quarters, and then because Dillon Brooks was doing a really good job on Steph Curry that game, at least as much as he could. But then he fouled out midway through the 4th quarter. That kind of halted all the momentum the Grizzlies had coming back into that game, and then Curry went off, finished with 46 points in this one. I mean, I think the Grizzlies would probably be a bit more prepared. They're probably talking to Dillon Brooks at this moment, saying like, you got to watch your fouls going into this game. But in terms of just like just ability like on both ends of the floor. I mean, both teams are good defensively, but the Warriors, like when the time is right, you got Steph Curry, you got Draymond Green running the offense. I mean, I think they should be good. They're top 5 in 3-point shooting. And the Grizzlies honestly cannot buy a bucket from three. Even watching that Spurs game last night, like
Yeah.
it was hard for them to like get some threes off. So I see the Warriors definitely still getting into that 8 seed. It should be a lot more entertaining. It should be an entertaining game, but yeah, I think the Warriors should be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's get into this. The big topic of the show, we are going to be doing our NBA playoff predictions. All of the matchups are set except for the 1-8 matchup. We're going to give our predictions for either just in case for either matchup that could happen. But I mean, we're not going to really talk about much about the 1-8 matchups, maybe with the Warriors and stuff, but we'll have to wait and see. But what we're going to do here is we're going to be talking about what are we most excited for going into the series. And then at the end of each series start, we're going to be giving our predictions as to who is going to win and how many games. We've talked a lot about the West in like the early part of the show. So let's show some love to the East. Let's start off on the East side. Miles, you ready to talk about this?
I'm ready.
All right. We're going to start off with let's start off with the 1-8 matchup. Let's start off with the 1-8 matchup out East. We have the Philadelphia 76ers, number 1 in the East, taking on either the Washington Wizards or the Indiana Pacers. 76ers, very good season this year. And with the Wizards and Pacers, their game's going to be happening tonight as of recording. But by the time you're listening to this, you guys should know the result. But Miles, what are you most excited for about either of these series, and how do you feel about the 76ers chances in this one?
I feel like it should be I'm actually a Philly kid.
Yeah.
I grew up I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm also a Sixers fan as well. So I feel like either way, whether it's the Wizards, I mean, I still feel like Bradley Beal isn't 100%. He's kind of like off one leg with that hamstring injury. And obviously with the Pacers, they are pretty good offensively, but defensively they're lacking. So I feel like no matter if it's the Wizards or the Pacers, I would still have the Sixers either having a sweep or at the most 5 games. And I honestly, if they pay, if in my opinion, if they face the Pacers, I feel like it'll be a sweep. If they face the Wizards, I'll give Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook some respect. Maybe they go off. Westbrook gets like a 30-point triple double or something crazy, and they get a game. But at the most, I can see either of those teams getting 1 game off them. But that's the most I feel like it would be an easy series for the Sixers.
Yeah, I am there with you. The 76ers both have just massive advantages over both these teams. Both teams are both hurt in terms of like their roster. We still don't know what Bradley Beal's status is, mostly because I mean, even in that last play-in game, I mean, he just did not look right. Him and Westbrook both played really badly in the last play-in game. And as for the Pacers, I mean, yeah, they put a beating on the Hornets, but at this end of the day, Miles Turner's not there. They still are. I mean, the Karis LeVert news absolutely killed them in terms of them like even having any chances. So it's going to be a tough series no matter what. When you have Embiid playing the best season of his career, and the 76ers playing as well as they have been, Ben Simmons finally back and healthy with their supporting cast, I think it should be a good series. But yeah, the 76ers, I think, are going to have a clear advantage here, and they should be able to take care of both the teams pretty easily. So, like, your predictions for either series, like, what would be your prediction?
I would say against the Pacers, I'm gonna have a sweep in 4 games.
Yeah,
Against the Wizards, I'll have them beating them in 5 games. Let's say 5 games. Yeah.
5 games, 5 games. I'm going to be right there with you. Wizards, I'm going to give them 5 games, 6 at most, but at the same time, I mean, their team is so erratic come playoff time. I still, like, really don't trust them, like, in these series formats. And against the Pacers, yeah, it's going to be a sweep. It's going to be a sweep. And I think the 76ers will just take care of business and get both these wins. Now let's move on to let's go on to the 2-7 matchup. The Brooklyn Nets taking on the Boston Celtics. The Celtics coming off a very big win against the Philadelphia 76ers. Jason Tatum going off for 50 points. This guy was absolutely on fire in that game. And the Brooklyn Nets, they're healthy. They are healthy, which is something we couldn't say for the majority of the season. But they got their 3 stars back. They're going up against basically a Jason Tatum led team with some broken parts around him. Miles, how are you feeling about the series?
I mean, I feel like Brad Stevens has already waved the white flag. He said like I heard something he said. He said like as a casual fan, you would think that the Nets would win. I'm like, you don't say that as the coach. But I think it's gonna be a sweep. I mean, I feel like Jason Tatum is gonna probably average 35 points. I mean, he's the only really offensive weapon. Obviously, have Kemba, Marcus Smart, but losing Jalen Brown is a huge blow for that team. And I just don't feel like they can even get a game on this Nets team.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely going to be tough. I mean, Jason Tatum, he's been playing like a top 15 player all season, but the problem is when you are facing 3 potential top 10 players in the NBA, that's just a whole other monster. Kevin Durant, I mean, that last game of the season, I mean, they weren't even trying, man. They were just trying to have some fun. That play with Blake
Yeah,
Griffin, do it behind the back, that whole thing, that was all over social media. That was
yeah,
absolutely crazy.
yeah,
I I mean the Celtics, like, I mean, one of their biggest strengths from previous years was that they had a good defense as their backbone to their good team. That hasn't even really been the case this year. A bunch of their pieces are just broken. I mean, Marcus Smart had to leave the last game with some sort of injury. Same thing with Time Lord, Robert Williams. And although Kemba's back, Jason Tatum's still going to play well. It's just going to be extremely hard to, um, with just even this lineup to even just compete with the Brooklyn Nets. At most, I mean, my prediction for this, I have the Nets winning in 5. I think that Jason Tatum's going to probably go off for one game, and I think him and Kemba could probably like combine for like 70 something points one game to just take them over the top. But yeah, this should be an easy series for the Brooklyn Nets, especially against a broken down Celtics. What is your official prediction?
I would say the Nets winning in 4 games. Nets winning in 4 games.
Sweep. So this guy has a sweep going on in this matchup. It's going to be definitely interesting to see. I mean, if Brad Stevens is a coach that everyone is saying that he is, maybe he'll make some adjustments and maybe he'll do something. But yeah, it feels like the Celtics. I mean, even Jalen Brown like having that surgery. I mean, it wasn't really necessary yet, but he decided to take it anyway. Kind of showed that they were kind of like mailing in the season. But
Mhm.
Jason Tatum, I mean, if you want to see some freaking like takeover games, I mean, this is those series to watch because it's going to be basically Tatum and the rest of them boys.
Yeah,
Let's move on to probably the most interesting matchup of the first round. We got a rematch of last year, man. The Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Miami Heat, the 3-6 matchup. The Milwaukee Bucks this season, I mean, they're not number one in the East like they have been the last 2 years, but they still have been absolutely great this year. Giannis playing at a high All NBA level. Drew Holiday been great this year. Same thing with Chris Middleton. And the Miami Heat, who have struggled for a good chunk of the season, but have turned it up over the last month and a half and have propelled themselves to the sixth spot in the East. Miles, in terms of the series, do you think that the Bucks can really just get rid of these demons right away after like what happened with the Miami Heat last year?
I feel like it's gonna be a long series. It's not gonna be like how it was last year in 5 games. I feel like that was an aberration. But it's gonna be a long series. I feel like the addition of Drew Holiday, it was a great addition for the Bucks. Also having PJ Tucker, having two dogs on your team is something that Giannis needs. Also with the addition of Drew Holiday, having another guy that can get a bucket in down the stretch. So I think that with those additions, I'll still feel like the Milwaukee will have a slight advantage, but the Heat you can't underestimate them. I mean, Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Butler is one of those players like when it comes down to the playoffs. I mean, he like ends up turning it up a notch. So you can't really try and knock him off or whatever. And obviously they have Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic, obviously Bam Adebayo. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. So it's going to be a long series. It's going to be a long series, but I feel like it'll end up being one of the best series in the first round, if not the best series in the first round.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Darren. I mean, the Miami Heat, I mean, it seems like so far away, but they were just in the NBA Finals just last year. They know what it takes to get deep into this playoffs. And yeah, this is going to be a long series. The Milwaukee Bucks have all the pressure against them now, so this is why I don't think they want to face the Miami Heat. But at the same time, I think if they do get this win over the Miami Heat, it's going to be a huge confidence booster, knowing that they can kind of exercise those demons that they had from last year and kind of like be able to move forward. And as for the Miami Heat, I mean, I think they really were trying to get that 5 or 4 seed to try and face either the Hawks or the Knicks, because I feel like they feel like this is going to be an easier matchup. But man, they got to face one of the best teams in the East right now in the Milwaukee Bucks. And with the way Giannis is playing, it's still at a high level. Chris Middleton um, playing well. Drew Holiday, I mean, this is like, I think the biggest difference going to be from last year's to this series. Having Eric Bledsoe from last year and the way that he just doesn't perform come playoff time, bring in Drew Holiday, who has proven that he could put in work in the playoffs and is a much better defender than him, I think is going to pay dividends in this series in particular. And I think this is going to be a long series. It's going to be a very fun series. But in terms of a question, I have a question for you about the Miami Heat. I mean, this feels eerily similar to what they could do, what they have done last year. You know, 5th seed last year, this year 6th seed. I mean, do you feel like they could have another Cinderella run in them, or do you think that these teams are going to be a lot more ready for this team?
I feel like last season with the Heat going to the finals, that was an aberration. I feel like it was a product of the bubble in Orlando, just having no fans and having guys. I just don't feel like guys like Tyler Hero would have such big postseason performances without any fans. Now, obviously, we're gonna have more fans in the stadiums now. We're gonna have home court, home court advantage, and I feel like that will definitely play a part. I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat beat the Bucks, but I would be totally shocked if they ended up making like a Cinderella story, maybe games like the conference finals, gets to the finals. I don't see that. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Bucks, but in terms of them doing what they did last year, I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I mean, especially because if they beat the Bucks now, they're gonna have to face them. That's a second round, so that's
Yeah,
especially gonna be especially tough.
yeah.
But Miles, in terms of this series, give me your official prediction.
I'm gonna say the Bucks in in, in 7 games. The Bucks in 7 games.
Oh man, this man thinks it's gonna go the
It's
distance.
gonna
The
go the
Bucks,
distance.
7 games for the Bucks. I think the Bucks are gonna lock in this Drew Holiday edition. I think it's gonna really show a lot of people like why they gave up so many assets to acquire this guy. I think it's gonna be a long series, but I don't think it's gonna go with 7 games. I have the Bucks winning in 6. But I mean, Heat though, you cannot sleep on them, and I think that any team that goes up against them, even the Milwaukee Bucks, they know what they're capable of, and I think they're going to be more prepared this year. So I have the Bucks in 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's move on to the final series in the East. We got the 4 or 5 matchups. The battle of both, like basically playoff babies in terms of the East. Like here, I mean, we got the New York Knicks, the number 4 seed, going up against the Atlanta Hawks. Both teams haven't made the playoffs in quite a while. The Hawks haven't made it since the Al Horford era, and the Knicks haven't even been to the playoffs since the Carmelo Anthony era. So you got both these teams having like really good seasons, probably above expectations. The Knicks obviously being one of the biggest shocks this year, and the Hawks turning their season around after firing Lloyd Pierce and basically making Nate McMillan the head coach. Miles, what are you looking for in the series, and what has got you most excited?
Well, what's got me most excited is seeing the Knicks are back. I mean, for so long, I mean, they have been just a laughing stock in the NBA. So to see them back in the playoffs is something that is good for the NBA, and it's good for New York as well. So with the way Julius Randle has really taken over, I mean, he's obviously he'll be a lock for most improved player, but I feel like he should also be in the conversation, not winning obviously, but in the conversation for MVP. But I feel like it's going to be a great series. It's going to be a long series for sure because both these teams are pretty much evenly matched. Obviously, not there isn't a ton of experience. Obviously, this is going to be Trae Young's first playoff game, a playoff series. I believe it's going to be Julius Randle's first playoff series. So both of their biggest stars are gonna, this is going to be their first time around in the playoffs. So I expect this to be a very long series. But they have some great coaching on both sides, whether it's Tom Thibodeau with what he's done with the Knicks and also with Nate McMillan. I mean, he's done a fabulous job with this Hawks team. I mean, before he took over, I mean, I believe they were out of the playoffs or
Yeah,
in that
they were.
playing game. They were out of the playoffs. So what he's done with this Hawks team, he has done a fantastic job. Not like again, this will be a long series.
Yeah, and this is probably like one of the hardest. This is probably going to be one of the hardest series to predict in terms of this first round matchups because we have nothing to really go off of in terms of them performing in the playoffs. Because, like you said, Julius Randle, this is his first playoff series. Same thing with Trey Young, and I think the biggest like thing to look out for in this is that which of these young guys are going to be able to step up in the in the big lights. I mean, the Knicks have been playing well all season long, but will this translate into playoff basketball? Same thing with the Hawks. I mean, Nate McMillan is probably the one with the most playoff experience with anyone on that team. And yes, sure, I mean, same thing with Tom Thibodeau on the Knicks. It's going to be a big, just like a coaching chess match. Who's going to be able to outcoach the other? And it's really going to be like which of these top guys is going to um, be able to step up, whether it's Trey Young, is he going to take his game to the next level come playoff time? Or Julius Randle, I mean, is this just a regular season facade or is this going to be something that is sustainable for like long stretches at a time, even in the postseason? But when it comes to, I mean, like before we move on, I mean, in terms of like both these teams, I mean, is there anyone that you're looking I mean, obviously the matchup between Julius Randle and Trey Young is going to be the main focus, but is there anyone else you think is going to make like a big difference on either of these teams?
I feel like Derrick Rose will have a great series. I expect him to really show out. Obviously, I don't remember the last time he's been in the playoffs. It might have been with again when he was with the Bulls back in
Yeah.
like 2015 against that against the Cavs. And I remember that. So obviously, he hasn't been in the playoffs in a while. So I expect for the Knicks to win, obviously, Julius Randle has to play well. Also, Derrick Rose coming off the bench. Also, RJ Barrett. He's kind of gone under the radar with the hype of Zion in that class. But RJ Barrett, he has played pretty well this season, and and for the another key for the Knicks to win this series is for Julius Randle, Derrick Rose, and RJ Barrett to play well and to go along with their defense, which is one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Julius Randle. Obviously, he's the one who gets all the headlines. But Derrick Rose, ever since they acquired him from the Detroit Pistons, has been a godsend. He's been a great piece for them off the bench. RJ Barrett. I mean, he is having definitely an underrated sophomore season. I mean, no one is barely talking about how much he's improved this season. Averaging like basically 18 and 6, much better from the 3-point line. He's going to be a massive part to this team's success. But since you talked about a lot about the Knicks, I mean, for the Hawks, I think someone who's going to really step up big here is someone like a Bogdanovich, someone who is like who can alleviate the pressure off Trey Young. And over the last like month and a half, I mean, he has been playing absolutely fantastic for this team, and is a big reason why they're still pulling off these wins. John Collins is someone to look out for too, someone who is in a contract year. Hasn't really shown that he is worth max money, but if he's going to show out at any point during the season, the time is right now. So a lot of both these teams have something to prove. Both these teams, like I mentioned earlier, they're playoff babies. First time in both these teams' eras that they have made the playoffs. But Miles, let me hear your playoff prediction. Who do you have winning this series, and in how many games?
Like I said, I think it's gonna be a long series, but I'm gonna have the Knicks win this one in 7 games. It's gonna be a long, hard series, but I have the Knicks in this one.
Okay, okay. Now this is the one where we finally disagree. I have the Atlanta Hawks winning this series in 7 games. I feel like that this is the type of environment that Trey Young just strives for. I have a feeling that he's going to have a big, big series, maybe somewhere near like a 30-10 type series. Julius Randle is going to play well as well, but I just do not trust that Knicks offense, at least to sustain itself for the duration of a series. The Hawks defense is at least as average, but their offense is much better, especially with Trey Young, Bogdan Bogdanovich, John Collins, and all them. But you're right; it could go either way. This is going to definitely be a exciting matchup in the first round, probably the most exciting one in terms of the East one, and like in terms of we just don't know what's going to happen and who's going to step up. But let's move on to the West. Let us move on to the Western Conference. We're going to do it like we started off at the Eastern Conference. We're going to start with the 1-8 matchup. Obviously, we still don't know who the 8 seed is. The matchup is going to be this Friday night. But we have the Utah Jazz as the number 1 seed going up against either the Golden State Warriors or the Memphis Grizzlies. We already talked about the Warriors-Grizzlies matchup. In terms of the Jazz, they've been absolutely fantastic all year. Top 10 on both sides of the ball in terms of offense and defense. We still don't know the status of Donovan Mitchell, which is going to be extremely interesting going into the series. But Miles, how are you feeling about the series? Do you think, is there any way that any of these teams can upset the Jazz?
Now, I would say that the Grizzlies, I don't even obviously there is a question mark with Donovan Mitchell. I'm not sure about Mike Conley, whether he's in or out or whatever that case may be. But I feel like even if they don't even have those guys in the lineup, I don't see the Grizzlies posing that much of a threat. On the other side with Golden State, I believe now people were saying, Draymond Green was saying we believe team of 2007 or whenever that the team that beat the Mavs as an eighth seed. But I do believe that if the Warriors beat the Grizzlies tomorrow, they will have a very very good shot to beat the Jazz. In my opinion, I would actually have the Warriors winning that series just because of the question marks.
Yeah.
Just because of the question marks with Donovan Mitchell. And even if he comes back, it's like he hasn't played a long time. He's probably not gonna be the most efficient. So it's like, who's gonna take up that slack? Is it gonna be Jordan Clarkson? I just don't Boyan Bogdanovic. So I just don't see. I don't. It's going to be hard for them. With the Grizzlies, I don't see that being too much of a threat. But the Warriors, I see them being a real threat.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is with the Grizzlies match, I mean, obviously, yeah, I think the Utah Jazz are gonna make quick work of the Grizzlies. I mean, if anything, at most, they're gonna take one game, but that's about it. The Warriors is gonna be extremely interesting because, like you mentioned, Donovan Mitchell has not played in the last couple weeks, close up to a month now, and now coming off this ankle injury. I mean, we don't know what kind of like how much he's in game shape and stuff like that, because when Donovan Mitchell is at his best, we know from last year's playoffs that he could just go off. Last year, that whole battle with him and Jamal Murray was probably one of the highlights of last year's NBA bubble, and that's definitely something to look out for. Donovan Mitchell not being 100%. I think Mike Conley should be good now. I mean, he was playing the last 2 games of the season, so I think he should be fine in terms of the rest of the roster. But the Warriors are definitely going to put up a fight. They are 100% going to put up a fight. This is not some normal H that you got here. You got Steph Curry playing, Draymond Green being the anchor of that defense. It's definitely going to be a close game. I still think the Jazz do have an advantage over the Warriors, especially with them being one of the top defenses in basketball, which is going to make it tough for Golden State to really develop any offense. But one of the things to watch here is, and I'm going to throw this to you afterwards to see your thoughts, but the whole Rudy Gobert situation from the last few playoffs where the Houston Rockets played him off the court. Same thing last year with the Denver Nuggets. I mean, they were just taking advantage of him left, right, and center. I mean, do you think there's going to be another problem? Do you think it's going to be a problem this year for the Jazz, or do you think that the Jazz are going to overcome it?
I feel like in terms of Rudy Gobert, I mean, it all depends on the matchups. I believe with the Warriors, obviously, I mean, I feel like the way that Rudy Gobert gets exposed is if a team has a stretch five that can take him away from the paint and has him play the perimeter. So I mean, and that in that scenario, I mean, I don't think either of the Grizzlies or the Warriors have the personnel to really expose Rudy Gobert because none of them have a stretch five. I mean, the Warriors, they have Kevon Looney. Obviously, he's not going to shoot anything, and as a matter of fact, Jonas Valanciunas, he doesn't shoot threes really like that, but in terms of a mid-range shooter, he's pretty good with that. So I guess in that series, maybe he could get exposed, but I just feel like a team has to have a stretch five, kind of like an AD or somebody like that to really expose Gobert. Because in the paint, he is a monster. I'll give him that. He is a monster.
Yeah, he's one of the best defensive players in the league. A lot of people have him for defensive player of the year this year, and rightfully so. And I think it's going to be like a very interesting thing to see, like how the Grizzlies or the Warriors, that when they get into this series, how they're going to be planning to get Gobert out of the paint, which is probably going to be one of their goals. And then the last thing about the Utah Jazz before we get into our predictions, I mean, one of the biggest things they improved from the last few years to now is that their 3-point shooting is just absolutely insane now. One of the best 3-point shooting teams in basketball. They're like top 3 in percentage, makes, and attempts. So that's something to also look out for.
Yeah.
But Miles, in terms of this series, whether it's the Warriors, whether it's the Grizzlies, give me your predictions.
So if it's the Warriors, I'm gonna say the Warriors in 6 games. I know I'm out on a limb with this one, but I just have a feeling that without Mitchell out, I feel like the Warriors could pull off a major upset, and Curry just playing at the best level I've ever seen him play in his career. Even better than 2016 in my opinion, because this is without Klay Thompson, and all the focus is on him. If they face the Grizzlies, 5 games the most, like 5 games is kind of being generous. It's really, I think, matter of fact, it'll be a sweep. If they face the Grizzlies, the Grizzlies, it'll be a sweep. But the Warriors, they pose a real threat, and I think that they could pull off the upset.
Yeah. This is a bold move. I mean, Donovan Mitchell could be back, but he's still not going to be 100%. That's what Miles is begging on. The Warriors pick is definitely bold. For me, if in terms of the Grizzlies, I have the Jazz sweeping them. I do have the Jazz sweeping them. I think it should be it's just going to be easy work for the Jazz, especially because the Grizzlies just cannot shoot threes for the life of them. So I think it's going to be it should be quite easy for the Jazz, who are one of the best 3-point shooting teams. And in terms of the Warriors, I do think it's going to be a long series. But the Jazz they hear people like you, Miles. They hear people like you doubting them, doubting their ability as a number 1 seed, the best record in the NBA. They're hearing this, and I think that I honestly do believe that they're going to be ready to prove some doubters wrong. I have the Jazz winning this series, winning it in 6. The Warriors are going to put up a fight, but I think the Jazz, their continuity, their great defense, I think it should be enough to pull out the win. But that Warriors pick, it's definitely bold. Let's move on to the 2-7 matchup. The 2-7 matchup, the Phoenix Suns taking on your Los Angeles Lakers. It's a lot of people calling this the banana boat matchup because CP3 going up against LeBron James. Definitely. So I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember these guys facing each other in the playoffs in their career. Like, at least I don't, especially because they've been on different conferences for the majority of their careers. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very intense matchup. The Phoenix Suns haven't been in the playoffs in 11 years, and now they have the second best record in the league. And the Lakers struggling all season long, but they got their guys healthy when they needed the most. Miles, what are your thoughts on this series? And do you think that the Suns can? It's weird I'm saying this, but do you think the Suns can upset the Lakers in this scenario?
I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, as obviously what Chris Paul has done with this team, I mean, it's just been great. I mean, with them not making the playoffs last season to not being, the second seed, having the top 3 overall seed in the whole entire NBA. I mean, what Chris Paul has done. I mean, wherever he goes, they win. Wherever they goes, the team wins. He ends up turning the teams around. And Monty Williams, he could very well be the coach of the year, and as well. So that team, you can't sleep on this Suns team. But I feel like they're too young. When they had Devin Booker, his first playoff series, DeAndre Ayton, his first playoff series, got Mikal Bridges, his first playoff series. So they have a lot of young guys. I feel like you know I just don't see them going ahead in their first playoff series being LeBron and AD. I just don't see that. Even if LeBron is not totally 100% right now, and AD is still coming back into like his role, and they still have guys like Drummond and Schroeder coming back in. So I still feel like it's gonna be a lot to say that the Suns could pull off the upset. And like you said, it's kind of weird as like a second seed is the underdog and the seventh seed. I don't remember that ever
Yeah,
happening. And
exactly.
this is a crazy season. But I feel like I'm gonna be honest. I feel like it's gonna be a short. I feel like it's gonna be a short series. I don't see this series being super long, like 7 games or something like that. I'd be surprised if it goes that long. But again, it's gonna. I can't really pick. It's gonna be hard for me to try and pick the Suns in this one, given the fact that they don't have the experience, obviously, that this Lakers team has.
Yeah, and it sucks for the Suns, man. I mean, 11 years not making the playoffs, and who are you facing in the first round? The defending NBA champions.
Yeah,
It's unlucky. It's just unlucky for
yeah,
them. I mean, all the points that you talked about, them being inexperienced, this is the type of thing that LeBron likes to feast on. He sees all these guys going to the playoffs, seeing the bright lights for the first time, and he's like, young guys, man. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade now. He's been doing this ever since these guys were in diapers. Freaking LeBron has been doing this
yeah.
all the time. Anthony Davis, I mean, we know what he's done last year in the playoffs. He has proven that he is a proven playoff performer. And it's just a weird thing because the Suns, they still feel like underdogs even after their like amazing season they had this year. It's really weird to put it like that, but they are still the underdogs in this series. But you got to show love to Chris Paul, obviously, for what he has done with this team. People giving him some MVP cred, which is definitely reasonable. Monty Williams, one of the best coaches in the league, taking this Suns team after 11 years of not making the playoffs to the playoffs. But I mean, they have the pieces. They have DeAndre Ayton. He's still coming into his own. Devin Booker, I think he can have a really, really good series. But it's just unfortunate they got to go against the Lakers in the first round. I think if they had the Warriors, I think that would be a lot more favorable to them. I think that I would like maybe choose them in that scenario. But
Yeah.
against the Lakers, now that they're healthy, now that they're kind of getting into their groove, it's hard for me to go against LeBron, man. Because even on that Suns team, I mean, who are the guys who even have experience? I mean, Jay Crowder and Chris Paul, and that's pretty much it. Even the
Right.
guys on the even the guys on the bench like Cam Johnson, Javon Carter. I mean, none of these guys have been in this type of pressure basketball situation before. So I think the Lakers will pick up the win the series. It could go 7 games. I could see it, but I could definitely still go to a short series. Miles, what is your official prediction for the series?
I feel like the games itself will be close. I don't feel like the Lakers will like blow them out, nothing like that, or but I still feel it'll be a 5 game series. The Lakers will win. I just feel like several of them get. It's kind of like how like the Lakers last year when they faced Jokic and Jamal Murray. A lot of those games they were close, but they ended up being but they ended up losing in 5 games. I feel like that's like kind of the way that it'll go. So I'll say it'll be 5 games. I wouldn't be shocked if it was 6. But I'd be totally shocked if it went to 7 games. I just don't feel like the Suns right now are ready, to really compete with LeBron James and Anthony Davis at this certain point. And Anthony Davis, he has had his way he has had his way with DeAndre Ayton. I mean,
Oh
they
man,
beat
yeah.
he's been having his way. So obviously Draymond Green has given him some fits, but DeAndre Ayton, I mean, I expect Anthony Davis to have a monster series and Lakers to win in 5 games.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, he's kind of like your prototypical center. He's not like a modern day type of center. He's kind of like those kind of like older type of centers. And when you're facing up against Anthony Davis, who is able to kill you from the inside or the outside, I think it's just going to make him like an ordinary player here, and it's going to be extremely tough for someone to contain him. In this series, I have the Lakers winning, but I have them winning in 6. Like you mentioned, it's not gonna be an easy series in terms of like individual games. I think that the Lakers will win in 6 games, but each of these games are gonna be close. Chris Paul and Devin Booker going up against like LeBron, like hitting these clutch shots back and forth, back and forth. I could see a lot of those happening, but the Suns are just inexperienced. I mean, one of my before like this episode, like one of my previous episodes, I had Devin Booker as one of the playoff breakout performers, but it's going to be tough. I mean, he's probably going to have some big games, but I think the Lakers are going to just know how to pull out these type of games. They know how to win in the playoffs, and I expect that to happen in this series against a very inexperienced Suns team. So for me, Lakers in 6, Miles got Lakers in 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to the 3-6 matchup. The 3-6 matchup, the Denver Nuggets versus the Portland Trailblazers. Last day of the regular season, these guys played as well. So we're going to see at least another 4 games of this matchup. the Nuggets raveled by injuries this season. Jamal Murray going down in the Warriors game, Will Barton going down. I mean, it's been an injury-riddled season for this Denver Nuggets team. And this Trailblazers team, although they finished off 42-30, um, honestly, I think it was a pretty disappointing year. They brought in Covington, they brought in Derrick Jones Jr. to improve their defense. They're still one of the two worst defenses in basketball. It's going to be still an interesting matchup, especially because the Nuggets do not have anyone that can kind of match up with Lord and McCollum. But Miles, what are your thoughts on the series?
I feel like it's gonna be. Obviously, we have the end. We have the. I mean, I feel like he's. I feel like he's. I feel like we have the future MVP and Nikola Jokic in this series. So I feel like he'll have a monster game. I don't feel like Nurkic could even hang it. Could even is even gonna like be able to stand with Jokic. I mean, I feel like Jokic will have his way this series, and I feel like it'll go 6 games. But obviously with losing out on Jamal Murray, I just don't think that this Nuggets team could really compete with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. They have Covington. They have the Blazers. They have a pretty good team. They have a pretty good team. Obviously, injuries have also messed up their season a little bit. Having CJ McCollum out for a while, having Nurkic out for a while. I'm not sure if Zach Collins is back or not, but he's been injured as well. So this Trailblazers team is a 6 seed, but kind of like last season when they were 8th seed, they aren't the typical 6 seed or typical 8th seed. I feel like their talent on their team, shows that like I feel like talent wise, they're a top 3, top 4 team in the West. So I would have the Blazers with the edge in this series, but I do feel like Jokic is gonna get a game or two. I really wouldn't be surprised if this goes to 7 games because I just feel like Jokic will end up having his way in this series.
Yeah. And the thing about Nikola Jokic, and it's crazy to think about this, but when it comes to playoff time, he even takes his game to another level,
Yeah,
which is hard to believe because he's having an MVP season right now. But looking at his like past 2 playoff appearances, I mean, he has just put up just monster numbers. Like in his first playoff series, 25 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists. Last year, 24 points a game, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, he just knows how to turn it on when it comes to the playoffs. But I think the biggest thing to look out for in this series is kind of how will Michael Porter Jr. react to being a number 2 option on a
yeah,
team that is looking to go forward, like to go deep into this playoffs. Because with Jamal Murray going down, obviously Michael Porter Jr. kind of assumed a role as a second option. And if you remember last year's playoffs, he was running his mouth telling that he should be getting more shots at the end of the game. This guy was like has played like I think at the time like under 30 games in his career, and he's already talking about getting more shots in these playoff games. And people were quick to dismiss it because he was basically a rookie at that point because he hasn't played many games. But now he's kind of been forced into scenarios. So it's more of a case of like, you see yourself there, Michael Porter Jr. You asked for this. He asked for this. So now it's time for him to show up. Obviously, CJ and Dame have done this for quite a number of years now. Obviously, it hasn't gone to hasn't resulted in a finals appearance, but they were able to go deep into a playoff run. But I still think Jokic's ability, I think, is just going to be too much for the Trailblazers to handle, especially being one of the worst defenses in basketball. And the game plan I could see from the Nuggets just right away is that having Jokic on the top of the key and just have the rest of the guys cutting all the time. And I just don't think that the Trailblazers are going to be able to stop that and be able to chase the players around him just for the length of a series. Michael Porter Jr. I think will come up big in this matchup, but yeah, it's going to go long. This series is going to go long. Both teams obviously having their own deficiencies, but I still think this series is going to go long. Miles, what is your official prediction?
I'm gonna say it's gonna be 7 games for sure. I'm gonna have the Trailblazers coming out with the win on the road on
On the
Game
road.
7, like Game 7. How get that dub on the road.
Crazy. I think they did this a few years ago against the San Antonio Spurs. So let's see if they could do this again against the Nuggets.
Yeah,
I got the Nuggets winning in 7 games. I think that Jokic is going to have some sort of crazy stat line by the end of the series, probably like something like 30, 12, and like 8 or something like that. He's going to be absolutely fantastic. I think that Michael Porter Jr. is going to have a big series as well. And also look out for other people. Monty Morris is still like a pretty solid player. We've seen that some games he could do in the bubble last year. Um, Paul Millsap, again, another veteran, but I think that this is going to be a series it could definitely go either way, but I have the Nuggets winning. Now for the final matchup. And same thing on the East side. We have one rematch on both sides of the bracket. This was a rematch from last year. We have the Los Angeles Clippers as the number 4 seed going up against the Dallas Mavericks. The LA Clippers this year, I think, has been under the radar, one of the best teams in basketball. I know in the last couple of games, they were really trying to avoid the Lakers in the second round, so they just basically tanked it.
Right.
Bro, I mean, the last game of the season, they out-tanked the Thunder. I mean, how on earth do you out-tank the Thunder?
They rested Kawhi, Paul George, Rondo, Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum. I'm like, come on now, but
no, the thing is, like, they were resting those guys, and then, like, obviously the Thunder are putting people out there like freaking Moses Brown, Josh Hall, like some guys that, like, I bet you like 80% of NBA fans haven't even heard of, but they still out tanked the Thunder. They got the 4th seed. I feel like they're comfortable with this rematch against the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks have actually struggled early on in the season, but Luka Doncic has really turned it up like in this last 2 months, and now they're the 5th seed. Miles, what is your thoughts on the series, and do you think the Mavs can get the revenge from last year?
Here's what I'll say now. Going back to last season, last playoffs, I think that I feel like the Mavs would have won that series if Kristaps Porzingis, was there for the entire series, and he got ejected in game 1. I feel like if he was there for the entirety of that series, the Mavs would have won. And I'm gonna stand by that. I believe that, if Porzingis, obviously he is injury prone, but if he can stay healthy for this series, they have a squad with obviously Luka, Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr. They have Marcus
Maxi Kleber.
Maxi Kleber. So they have shooters around Luka, and I do believe that this will be a long series, and I believe that Luka. I don't believe anybody can really guard Luka on the Clippers, and I feel like he'll have a monster series. And I expect Kristaps Porzingis, if he stays healthy, to have around like 22-10 or 24-10 around that around that range. And it's going to be a great series. But this Mavericks team, if they they started off bad in the beginning of the season, but they picked it up. Obviously, gotten back to a 5th seed. And I just believe that this team, if they can get hot at the right time, they can be very dangerous. And the Clippers, they were trying to avoid the Lakers, trying to avoid them in the second round, but they could have messed around and got a worse matchup right now in the first round. I feel like facing Luka versus facing Dame and the Trailblazers might not be the most favorable matchup for them. So with everybody healthy, it's going to be a long series.
Yes, it's going to be a long series, and the biggest factor in the series is Kristaps Porzingis going to be healthy, because we've been asking that question this entire season, and he just is in, he's out, he's back in, he's back out. He has been kind of the most like. We just don't know like what to expect like going into series. Like, is he gonna be ready? We're just not 100% sure. I mean, Luka has been great. He's probably going to be All NBA first team again this year. Maybe the Mavs are looking at the series like, hey, they really want to avoid the Lakers just to face us. Maybe that gives them extra confidence. But I'm looking at this series a lot different than you are. The Clippers have heard the jokes for months on end now. People have been clowning the Clippers ever since blowing that 3-1 lead to Denver. I think they're going in here with a different mentality. They understand that Luka and all them gave them a fight last year. I think they're going to actually come out a lot more focused than a lot of people think. And when you got Kawhi, who knows how to like win these series, I think he's going to be extra focused like from the get-go. Paul George, he doesn't want to be hearing that Pandemic P stuff anymore, man. He's done hearing about Pandemic P. They have a restructured roster. Serge Ibaka is there as well. Ivica Zubac. They got a good roster, and I'm not saying that Dallas doesn't, but it's definitely something that to look out for in terms of KP? I mean, is he going to be healthy? Is he not? I cannot trust that in this series. The Clippers, I think, are just on a mission this year. They are on a mission to try and go deep into this playoff run. They haven't talked all season long, which is different from last year because they've just been talking and talking a lot last year. But I think they're focused. They know what the plan is. I think the Clippers should be able to pull off this series. The KP thing, though, like you said, it's the biggest question mark in terms of the series. But I think the Clippers will lock down, will clamp down. I think they'll pull out this win. But Miles, the final prediction of the episode, man. Who do you have winning this series?
So my final prediction is gonna be spicy. Obviously, I had the Warriors possibly beating the Jazz if they beat the Grizzlies in the eighth, as eighth seed. And I'm gonna go out with a bold prediction. This one as well. I'm gonna say that the Mavericks. I'm gonna have a caveat. As long as Kristaps Porzingis is healthy for the entire series, I'm gonna have them winning this, and I'll say in 7 games. In 7 games, we'll have the Mavs pulling off the major upset of the postseason, being the Clippers.
Imagine beating the Clippers in round 1. But here, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to give Kristaps Porzingis, if he goes 7 games, I'll give Kristaps Porzingis 4. If he plays 4 games, how do you feel about your prediction?
Nah. If he plays 4 games, I mean, it's just the Clippers. They have too much with. I mean, obviously, okay. Rondo is a great piece. I forgot about that. Will elevate the Clippers to another level that they weren't last season. But I just believe that the offensive, the offensive weapons that the Mavericks have, I just feel like it'll be too much for the Clippers. I don't see Kawhi or anybody else stopping Luka from either driving, kicking out, or just driving and getting his own buckets. So I would say that. I mean, obviously, if Kristaps only plays 4 games, I mean, I would probably have the Clippers winning in 6 or maybe 5. But I'm hopefully Kristaps Porzingis can stay healthy, so we can at least just see the dynamic duo between him and Luka. I feel like that is a sight to see, and I'll be excited to see them possibly pull off a major upset.
Yeah, KP, get healthy, man, because they're gonna start having questions if you can't finish off this playoff series. I mean, they paid you a lot of money, and if you can't stay healthy even for a playoff series, I mean, they're gonna be thinking of moving him. I really do think that's gonna be a possibility if he just can't stay healthy. My official prediction: I can't trust KP to stay all 7 games. He hasn't been doing it his entire career. I got the Clippers winning in 6. They're on a mission this year. Kawhi, I mean, I've seen firsthand, you've seen firsthand what Kawhi Leonard could do, can bring heartbreak to a team. I know what he could do for a team. I think this is a different year for the Clippers. I think they're more motivated. Paul George is going to okay, I'm not going to bet on Paul George, but yeah. But I think these guys are going to be a lot more motivated, a lot more focused. The Clippers are business right now. They mean for business, and I think that they're going to be able to pull out this win for the 2nd year in a row. But yeah, those are all of our playoff predictions. Let us know down below what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree? Miles got some bold takes over here. Let's see if anyone wants to refute him on any of them. Obviously, comment on the Instagram post as well if you are not on the YouTube comments. But yeah, I think this is where we're going to end today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to give Miles the floor right now. What's going on in your podcast right now, and people should look forward to going forward?
Yes, so obviously with the NBA playoffs starting up, gonna have a whole lot of NBA content. Gotta have my man TV on the episode as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And we got some great content going on with all sports. So make sure to tune in on Apple Podcasts at Real Talk with Miles Johnson and on Spotify, and also make sure to follow me on YouTube, TikTok, all that jazz. I'm just happy to be on this show, man. It was a great show. Had to talk about all the playoff matchups. Hopefully, most of our predictions are right. Obviously, we had a lot of the same predictions, but we'll see who is right and who is wrong with either the Clippers or the Jazz and the Warriors or the Hawks and Knicks. So it'll be exciting to see these, to see these playoffs.
Yeah, they start on Saturday. I'm super excited to watch it. Obviously, there's still 2 more playing games as well, so that's going to also be exciting. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show. We'll definitely have you on at another time. Again, this is where we're going to end things. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to follow our TV on basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other content. Subscribe to the YouTube, hit the notification bell, like the video as well. Subscribe, leave a review if you're on Apple, and just show your support in any way possible on all the other podcast networks. I'll be back on Monday with another guest on the podcast, discussing our final thoughts before the for the NBA playoffs. So you definitely want to see that one. I'm gonna be reviewing the guest on Sunday afternoon. So please, so remember to check that out. But yeah, this is where we're gonna end things. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you'll have a fantastic day. TV signing out. Miles signing out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.